Chapter 12, Embassy Row, January 11th, 1930, Washington, D.C. We didn't sleep. We didn't speak much either. The road from Baltimore to D.C. was slick with ice and shadow, and the only sound in the car was the steady hum of tires and the click of Gary's cigarette lighter. Mark drove like the engine owed him money. We reached the edge of the city by sunrise. Washington in January looked like a politician's smile, clean on the outside, cold underneath. But we weren't here for appearances. We were here for a ghost. Charles Wakefield. We parked 2 blocks from Massachusetts Avenue, where the embassy stood like armored saints, stone walls, brass plaques, flags that didn't wave. Gary had already pulled the land records and found our target, a townhouse leased under a shell firm out of London. No staff listed, no embassy seal, just one name on a folded invoice, C. Wakefield. Mark checked his pistol. Gary pulled his coat tighter. I lit a cigarette and stared up at the windows. Quiet entry? Mark asked. Not today, I said. We walked the front steps like men who belonged there. The door was locked. I knocked. Once, loud. Nothing. I knocked again. This time it opened. Wakefield stood in the doorway, coat on, gloves in hand like he'd been expecting us. Patrick, he said. Mark, Gary, you're early. You lied, I said. I warned you. Gary stepped forward. Phase 2. What does it end with? Wakefield didn't flinch. It ends with fire, evidence destroyed, witnesses gone, and the past rewritten for peace. I didn't make the rules. I just enforced them. Mark reached for his coat. Wakefield raised a hand. There's someone else you need to meet. We followed him into the townhouse. Inside, the air was warm, silent, and wrong. Too quiet, too prepared. In the parlor sat a man in a wool overcoat, silver hair, and eyes like polished knives. British, military. Rank oozed off him like old blood. This, Wakefield said, is Colonel Harrington, liaison to His Majesty's government. The colonel stood slowly. I'm here to make you an offer, he said. We're not for sale, I replied. He smiled. Not money, Mr. Sissom, immunity. For you, for your friends, in exchange for the negatives, the ledger, and your silence. Gary glanced at me. Mark looked ready to punch something. I stepped forward. You killed 3 of my friends. I spared 3 more. I leaned in. Then I guess we're even. And I drew. Mark drew next. Gary opened his case and tapped the shutter on a small hidden camera aimed square at the colonel's face. Click, then silence. No gunfire. Wakefield didn't reach for a weapon. He just sighed. You've chosen a path, he said. No, I replied. We've lit a fuse. We left through the front door. By the time we hit the corner, I knew what had just happened. The war didn't end with a bullet. It started with the truth. Chapter 13, Front Page War. January 12, 1930, Washington, D.C. We didn't sleep that night, and I doubt Colonel Harrington did either. By dawn, Gary had sent the negatives and a full dossier to 3 newspapers, one in Chicago, one in New York, and the one that started it all, the St. Louis Evening Star. We didn't ask for money. We didn't ask for bylines. We just mailed the truth. 3 hours later, the first headline hit the streets. Prince, Nazis linked in 1924 meeting, U.S. veterans targeted. Mark and I read it from the front seat of his truck, parked just down the block from Union Station. The ink was still fresh. The photo was grainy, but the story was loud. Too loud to be buried again. Gary tapped the steering wheel. That's going to hit London like a bomb. Let it, I said. By noon, the editor from the Evening Star called us at a public booth outside the station. You've kicked the hornet's nest, Sissom. Half my switchboard is British accents, and the other half are people asking for more. Print everything, I said. Every name, every page, every lie. We're going to need more ink. I hung up and stepped into the cold with a cigarette and a weight that hadn't lifted, but had shifted. We weren't done. We'd exposed the meeting. But the ledger, the original, complete with accounts and signatures, was still missing. Wakefield hadn't handed it over, and I knew why, because someone else had it, and they were waiting for the world to scream before they cashed in. Mark pulled up beside me. Where to? Back to Baltimore, I said. There's one man left who might know where the ledger is. Who? I lit another match. Edgar Niles. Gary looked up from the back seat. You think he's still alive? I think, I said. He never left the city. As we pulled away, I glanced at the headline again. Black ink, big letters. Truth spelled out in plain daylight. But daylight doesn't last, and I had a feeling the night wasn't done with us yet. Chapter 14, Niles' Game. January 13th, 1903 Baltimore. Baltimore hadn't changed in the 2 days we'd been gone, but I had. The fog was thicker, the streets darker, or maybe it was just the weight of what we'd set in motion. We parked 3 blocks from the old tailor shop and walked the rest of the way. Gary had a new folder tucked under his coat, telegrams, intercepted messages, and a list of British operatives who'd entered the States in the last year. One name had stood out, Edgar Niles. Officially listed as missing in action. Unofficially, he was on someone's payroll and hiding in plain sight. We checked the tailor shop first. It was still abandoned, still quiet, but there were signs someone had been back. A boot print in the ash, fresh. Mark searched the alley. Gary found a matchbook from the Marlowe Club, a basement bar in the East Harbor that never asked questions, especially if you tipped ahead. We headed there next. The bouncer gave us a look, then waved us in. The air inside was thick with smoke and jazz. The kind of place where no one used their real name and everyone carried 2 stories, one they told and one they hid. We found Niles in the back, half-shadowed, a glass of gin untouched in front of him. He looked like a man waiting for the last train. I sat across from him. "You mailed the photograph," I said. "I did." "Why?" "Because silence stopped working." Gary stayed standing, watching the exits. Mark leaned against the wall, hand near his coat. "I gave Wakefield the ledger," Niles said. "He promised to bury it, said it would protect everyone involved. But he lied. He used it to gain leverage, to build a quiet war in the shadows. So where is it now?" Niles looked at me with eyes that had seen too much. "I don't know, but I know who took it from him." He slid a torn envelope across the table, a name scrawled in pencil, E. Morgan. Mark leaned in. "I know that name." Gary spoke next. "British intelligence liaison, operates under corporate cover now, last seen in New York 2 weeks ago." Niles nodded. "He has the ledger, and he won't use it to expose anything. He'll sell it to the highest bidder, the Germans, the Soviets, hell, maybe even the Americans." I stood. "We're gonna find him." Niles looked down at his drink. "If you do, don't expect to leave the room alive." I didn't reply. Mark dropped a 20 on the table. "For the gin." As we walked out, the weight of the next step pressed harder than the last. The truth was loose. But the final piece, the proof that tied it all together, was in the hands of a man with no allegiance to anyone. Edward Morgan. And if we didn't stop him, this wouldn't just be the story of 1924. It would become the story of what destroyed 1930. Welcome to SISM Detective Agency Stories, where the fog is thick, the coffee's black, and danger is always a step behind. Step into the smoke-filled alleys and shadowed train yards of 1920s America, where every case begins with a whisper and ends with a bang. This channel brings you original noir audio dramas, serialized mystery stories, and voice-over narratives steeped in grit, espionage, and betrayal. Follow former United States Navy intelligence officer Patrick Sissom as he uncovers dark secrets in the heartland of the American Empire. Whether you're here for old-school detective tales or period-accurate historical thrillers, you're in the right place. Like what you hear? Hit like, tap subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you never miss a case file. Drop a comment to tell us which mystery has you hooked or who you think did it. Coming soon, join the agency on Patreon. Want more stories, exclusive case files, behind-the-scenes content, and early access to new episodes? Our Patreon page is launching soon. Help support independent storytelling and get inducted into the inner circle. The cases are open, the city never sleeps, and you're on the list. Welcome to the SISM Detective Agency.